Low-tier tanks are not blessed with overzealous armor. Incorrect. Indeed, as many of us know, it's in the low tiers that many cruel, unsympathetic despots roam, blending so seamlessly in with those that are their lesser, until such a time comes when they pounce upon their old, weary prey. Let's put a stop to that. Today I'm discussing weak spots that beginners should know. We're going to look at various low tier vehicles, and I'm going to give you some specifics as well as some generalizations and rules that should help you to navigate as you begin the game. Let's start with Valentines. These British and for some reason Russian built vehicles occasionally spotted on the battlefield claim to be light tanks, but other than their superficial qualities such as the diamond above their name, they share few other traits, being quite potently slow and boasting powerful all-round armor. Now, while not quite so overzealously armoured as a Panzer IIJ or a Matilda, they can be quite challenging adversaries at times, so how to combat them? Well, it's important to remember, unlike the aforementioned tanks, all Valentine tanks have terrible arse armor. Every single one. Now, you may be thinking, but it's 60mm. Well, there's an issue with that. It's fucking lying. What Wargaming have done here is basically the equivalent of me holding up this white piece of paper, going like this, and then calling it a black piece of paper. I'm a quickie, baby. Panzer IC has 33mm of penetration. The max roll a Panzer IC can possibly get on penetration with standard ammo is 41mm. So here's it taking on a Valentine. And now here's the Valentine 60mm on rear armor. The max pen roll is 41mm. So what's going on here? Well, the only part of the Valentine's arse armor that is legitimately 60mm is this bar at the back. The entirety of the rest is 17mm. That is measly. And yes, while the angle and slope does add a little to that, it is in no way enough. So we know that Valentine's Day is butt sex time, but what if you're in the worst case scenario? What if a hold down Valentine is dominating your position? Shoot him in the face. Quite literally. Every Valentine in the game has a remarkably weak gun mantlet. My favourite spot is just to the left of the gun. Not only is this incredibly weak, it also happens to be right where the loader sits, giving you another method of crippling your opponent. You may be wondering why I haven't mentioned the third Valentine, the Valentine AT. That's because, well, yes, its hull armor is good. Some jackass decided to dump a superstructure made out of paper mache on top, so just shoot anywhere on its superstructure and you win! Yay! So now that your love life is back on track, let's move on. The Tier 4 Hexa is a terror. It's got potent firepower, impressive front armor, quite frankly startling mobility, but you have one significant advantage. You have better view range. The Hexa has 260 meters of view range. That is atrocious, joint lowest on any tank in the game, with the tech track a tier 2 Russian light tank, oddly enough. Unless you are playing a low tier arty, when facing a Hexa, a viable strategy is to use distance. That gives you two main advantages. One, its view range is terrible. You are likely to be able to outspot it when you face it as an opponent at distance. Two, the 105mm howitzer used by most Hexa commanders has a very poor shell travel time, meaning engaging moving targets at distance is very troublesome for them to do. So if you're facing a Hexa, don't engage it in close quarters. Its traverse speed is remarkable. It will keep up with you and likely surprise you. Engage it at distance. Also, interesting fact, unlike most tanks in the game, the Hexa's side skirts above the tracks are modelled into the actual hitbox of the tank, meaning you can hit them and the tank will lose hit points. This is remarkably uncommon, as most tanks, if you hit this spaced area above the tracks, you'll do no damage whatsoever. With the Hexa, no. You will destroy the entire tank. I mean, I have about 105mm of armor, but if you've got that pen, and you've got that angle, do it! Moving on to a troublesome adversary in the low tiers, the Panzer B2, one of few tanks in the game with apex matchmaking like the Valentine 2, meaning it will only ever see tier 4 games unless platooning with a non-apex matchmaking vehicle. As such, it reliably performs admirably in its games, much to the dismay of many who meet its rapid-fire gun and confront its moderate to impressive all-round armor. However, this vehicle is actually riddled with weak spots, a cupola of 46mm, or preferably this giant hatch on the left side of the front of the vehicle, which is 45mm. Failing that, the driver's hatch to the top right of the hull is also a considerable weak spot. It's worth noting all of those frontal weak spots are weaker than the rear of the tank, which is 55mm. So, yeah, the weakest part of Panzer B2 is actually from the front, particularly because of the gun mantlet, which is a huge weak spot on the Panzer B2. If you are face-hugging this vehicle, the place that you want to shoot is straight down the gun. Not only will you take out the gun, but you also take out some poor sod sitting right behind it. So yeah, oddly enough, weakest spot on the entire tank is the gun. Here's a general tip. You probably never had trouble penetrating an Electo. But further to that, you probably never realised just how little trouble you've had penning an Electo, because the Electo is one of the worst armoured tanks in the entire game. It's also special in that its frontal armour is weaker than its side and rear, with 6mm at the front and 10 everywhere else. This is so bad that every single tank in the entire game, no matter what it is, can pen the front of an Electo with HE. If you see an Electo fire HE at it. Here's an interesting fact for you. Every single Tech Tree Tier 5 Heavy has its weakest frontal armor on or just above its upper plate. Every single one. In fact, the only Tier 5 tanks that don't have this weakness, the OI Experimental, the KV-222, and the Excelsior. All of the others you can exploit. Let me be clear with my vernacular here. With Tier 5 Heavies, it's almost invariably the case that some of the weakest armor values on the entirety of the front will be found towards the upper portion of the hull. Which is incongruent because, as we're all mostly aware, that is certainly not the case as you progress into higher tiers. But there are a number of heavies at tier 5 that will bugger you right up if you try to shoot their lower plate. On the BDR, for example, the lower plate is the best armoured part of the entire frontal hull. Likewise on the T14 and the T1 Heavy. This is so alien a concept to a lot of us who play the game because we just assume on instinct almost that these areas are well armoured. Oh, a heavily sloped upper plate of a Russian heavy tank. Must be one no, it's the weakest spot of the entire tank. Oh, a heavily sloped upper plate of a British heavy. Must be one no, it's complete paper. Oh, a Russian Churchill must have a good upper plate. No, it's complete paper. Unless the enemy is utilising a very large amount of gun depression, these upper plates on Russian and British tier 5 heavies are incredible weak spots from almost any angle. It's counterintuitive, but disregarding the tanks I mentioned earlier, KV-220, OI Experimental and Excelsior, the higher you shoot on a tier 5 heavy's hull, the better you are. If it's British or Russian, it has a weak, and I mean very, very weak, upper plate. So assuming it's not aiding that angle by using gun depression, which, let's face it, the KV-1 ain't going to use enough gun depression to make that weak spot not a weak spot, then shoot there. It's worth noting that this rule progresses up to tier 6 with the British, the American, and the Russian KV line. Right? So if you ever wanted to easily pen a KV2, for example, with another KV2, the upper plate is a legitimate target, assuming it's flat onto you. Now, as helpful as that is for blitzing through tier 5 heavies, how about a little more? When you see Churchill, think turret.
Remember, Tom, the most important thing about this vehicle is that you don't go hull down. Because going hull down encourages people to shoot the weakest part of your entire tank.
Remember the "oh yes" dog? Well, he was nodding because a good World of Tanks player just shot him in the face. You see, while both these Churchill tanks have troubling hull armor, their turrets are truly abysmal, and most certainly the place to shoot for an easy kill. But Steve, I hear you say, the tier 6 Churchill has good turret armor, and I'd agree with you, to an extent. You see, the one trait that the tier 6 Churchill carried over from its tier 5 predecessor was abysmal roof armor. It is 20mm, meaning it will be overmatched by a 60.1 or higher millimeter gun. Now, most guns at tier 6 are, I'd say the average is maybe about 80mm, something like that. Most guns in the game will be able to easily overmatch the roof of that 20mm base. What this means is that hitting anywhere on the roof of a tier 6 Churchill will pretty much be a pen. You can aim at the cupola, miss it, hit the slanting roof literally anywhere, overmatch, and pen. So, if you see Churchill, think turret. So that's it for part 1 of the beginner Weakspots series. I didn't want to pack this video with too many just in case I overloaded people who are still trying to absorb this kind of information. But if you did find it helpful, please do leave a like. It is extremely helpful to my channel and my content. If you're interested in learning more about World of Tanks, I have a Learn World of Tanks playlist up there. If you're in the mood for some funny moments that myself, a Unicum at the game, and some other funny as hell people I've had in the game, there's a Strange Shenanigans playlist up there, which I personally think is hilarious. We stream live on Twitch on the weekends every Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. There'll be a link to that in the pinned comment and the description. It's worth noting as well that every single stream we do now, we give away 2,500 gold to one of our viewers. So if you're interested in having a chance to win and having a good time as well, drop by the Twitch channel. Other than that, nothing else to cover. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.